Recorded Books Inspirational presents an unabridged recording of The Haunted Rectory by Katherine Valentine, narrated by Christina Moore. This book is copyrighted 2006 by Katherine Valentine. This recording is copyrighted 2006 by Recorded Books, producer and publisher of Recorded Books Inspirational, an imprint dedicated to stories of faith and the human spirit. The author opens this book with the following quote from Ephesians, chapter 6, verse 12. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. And now, The Haunted Rectory.
Chapter 1. Saint Francis Xavier's rectory was haunted, or so it was reported by the last two pastors, who had fled in the middle of the night and refused to return even to pack their belongings. The first was Father Jack Naves, a pale, shy man who seldom smiled, more from his fear of dentists than from a lack of mirth. He was known in the diocese as a plodder without ambition, who could be counted on to do what was required of him, but nothing more. In some respects, Archbishop Gerard Carey welcomed his lack of ardor. He had enough prelates who constantly sought his favor in hopes of gleaning a coveted place on one of his special councils, which were widely considered rungs on the ladder to Rome. But Father Naves never expressed an interest in church politics or any other diocesan function outside his role as pastor of St. Bridget's, a parish in the northwest quadrant of the state that pretty much ran itself. It was blessed, or cursed, depending on what side of the clerical collar you happened to be speaking from, with a roster of active parishioners. In fact, the bishop was barely aware of Father Naves's presence until a parishioner paid him a visit, complaining about the priest's lackluster homilies and his refusal to entertain any new parish programs or to take part in the community's ecumenical events. This particular parish served an affluent, quintessential New England town, along with Congregational and Baptist churches and a bustling synagogue. All were nestled along a town green and took enormous pride in a religious esprit de corps. The synagogue shared Passover with Christians, and the Christians lit a menorah each December, functions that previous St. Bridget pastors had openly embraced. Father Naves, however, had no such leanings, and his continued absence from these affairs was proving to be an embarrassment to the parish. Normally, the bishop would have ignored the complaints. Lord knows he received dozens each month. Ever since Vatican II and the inclusion of parishioners in areas that had once been dictated solely by priests, the complaints had been coming in a steady flow. As far as the bishop was concerned, many practicing Catholics overstepped their boundaries. They felt that their opinions mattered far more than they should. Much to his chagrin, however, they sometimes did. Take this case, for instance. The man from Father Naves's parish who had paid the bishop a visit was a heavy contributor to the bishop's annual appeal, a fund whose coffers had drastically declined with the recent sex scandals in the church. Without those funds, the many programs provided throughout the archdiocese would be severely restricted. More important, the cutbacks would be seen as an act of failure by Rome. There was only one thing to do. As a matter of survival, the bishop decided that it would be prudent to move Naves to another, less visible parish. Arrangements were hastily made for Father Naves to pastor Saint Francis Xavier, whose predecessor, Father Stevens, had recently died from heart failure. Father Stevens had been 75 at the time. The bishop considered the matter settled and completely forgot about the appointment, until he received a strange phone call from Father Naves, complaining about an infestation of rodents in the rectory. He couldn't imagine why the priest was troubling him about such mundane matters. "Call an exterminator," he snapped. "I did." "And?" "It's kind of curious. Can
Sample complete. Ready to continue?